During this visit, the morning classes will be discussing Canto 10, Chapter 70 and 71. The scene is Dwaraka, and um, Krishna's daily activities is the title of the chapter, and the flow of the narration, Shukadeva Goswami narrating. What would Krishna do every day when he goes into the assembly hall? One day he's met by two personalities. First, a messenger from imprisoned kings. 20,000 kings were imprisoned by Jarasandha. They're devotees of Krishna, and they're asking for Krishna to save them from the hands of Jarasandha. And before Krishna even responds, in comes Narada Muni. He's received very warmly. And Narada Muni delivers another message. Your dear cousin and dear devotee, Yudhishthira Maharaj, is requesting your presence in Indraprastha to preside over the most wonderful Rajasuya Yajna. Would you please come? And we hear in this chapter, Krishna turns to Uddhava, saying, what should I do? And Uddhava knows that Krishna knows, and Krishna knows how to pull Uddhava's strings, and Uddhava says what Krishna wants. And everybody in the assembly says, very good, very good. And that's the plan. And that's how the chapter closes. So we're in Dwaraka. Here's the BBT chapter summary. This chapter describes Lord Sri Krishna's daily activities and two proposals placed before him, one by a messenger from Dwaraka and another by the sage Narada. A messenger from Dwaraka. Well, it's actually a messenger from Magadha. Magadha is the kingdom of Jarasandha. The kings are imprisoned by Jarasandha in his kingdom, and the messenger has come to Dwaraka to deliver this message from the kings. In the early hours of the morning, Lord Krishna would rise from bed and bathe himself in clean water. After executing the dawn rituals and other religious duties, he would offer oblations into the sacred fire, chant the Gayatri mantra, worship and pay tribute to the demigods, sages, and forefathers, and offer respects to learned brahmanas. Then he would touch auspicious substances, decorate himself with celestial ornaments, and gratify his subjects by giving them whatever they desired. The Lord's chariot driver Daruka would bring his chariot and the Lord would mount it and drive to the royal assembly hall. When he would take his seat in the assembly hall, surrounded by the Yadavas, he would appear like the moon, surrounded by the circle of stars called nakshatras. Bards would recite his praises to the accompaniment of drum cymbals, veenas, and other instruments. So that's his daily activity. On one occasion, the doorkeepers escorted a messenger into the assembly hall. The messenger offered prostrated obeisances to the Lord and then, standing with joined palms, addressed him. O Lord, Jarasandha has captured 20,000 kings and is holding them prisoner. Please do something, for these kings are all your surrendered devotees. Paragraph. Just at that moment, Narada Muni appeared. Lord Sri Krishna and all the members of the assembly stood up and offered obeisances to Narada by bowing their heads. The sage accepted a seat, and then Krishna gently questioned him, "Since you travel all over the universe, please inform us what the Pandava brothers are planning to do," as if he didn't know. Narada then praised the Supreme Lord and replied, "King Yudhisthira desires to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice. For this he requests your sanction and presence. Many demigods and illustrious kings will come just to see you." Final paragraph. Understanding that the Yadavas wanted him to defeat Jarasandha, Lord Krishna asked his wise minister Uddhava to determine which of the two matters at hand, the defeat of Jarasandha or the Rajasuya sacrifice, should be attended to first. So because the main topic is the two requests that were made, and I'm going to skip over what he did every morning. And we begin with verse number 22. 1070:22. Once a certain person arrived in the assembly, O king. That's Parikshit to Shukadev to Parikshit, King Parikshit, who had never been seen there before. The doorkeepers announced him to the Lord and then escorted him inside. That person bowed down to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and with joined palms, he described to the Lord how a number of kings were suffering because Jarasandha had imprisoned them. 20,000 kings who had refused to submit absolutely to Jarasandha during his world conquest had been forcibly imprisoned by him in the fortress named Giri Vraja. Short purport. Vishwanath Chakravarti points out that these kings refused the payment of tribute and other forms of submission to Jarasandha. Also, there is a well-known account in the Mahabharata and other literatures that Jarasandha desired to worship Maha Bhairava by offering him the lives of 100,000 kings in sacrifice. So my understanding of the system of ruling is the powerful kings would request either you submit to me, and submit to me means you accept that I'm sovereign over your kingdom, and then your kingdom becomes my kingdom, and you rule over your kingdom, but it's my kingdom, and to verify that it's my kingdom, you pay taxes. So in other words, the king becomes the landlord. In the Muslim system, it was the same as the zamindar. That's my understanding, at least. And the zamindar was a landholder who was subservient to the ruling king. And the king accepted the zamindar's role, and the zamindar worked under the king. He ruled his kingdom, but he gave taxes to the king. And this way the king received bounty or, wealth, so he could do what he needed to do, maintain his armies and so forth. And In this case, these kings didn't agree. So it's like what's going to happen is at the Rajasuya sacrifice, same thing. All kings in all lands must submit, and either that or they fight. So the four brothers were sent in different directions, while Yudhisthira stayed in Indraprastha. And there was a system, they send a challenge horse, and the other king says, no, I don't accept, and let's fight, or I accept, and here's my tax. And now there's the emperor, and then there's the ceremony where the emperor is anointed emperor. So that was the system. So there were Jarasandha, while Yudhisthira, there's a rivalry, while Yudhisthira is envisioning becoming the king of all kings, or the emperor, Jarasandha is similarly envisioning. And his idea is kings would submit to him and then pay taxes, and he would rule over their kingdoms, or so the emperor of all those places, or he would kill them. In this case, he put them in prison instead of just killing them, because his plan was to make a big human sacrifice to Mahabhairava, a form of Lord Shiva. So these 20,000 kings, that was the plan. They were going to be made a human sacrifice. And as commentary says, in some other places, it is said, not just 20,000, but 100,000 human sacrifices to please Mahabhairava. And that's Yudhisthira's spirit. So through the messenger, the kings are relaying a message to Krishna. They say it twice. Krishna, Krishna. Oh, immeasurable soul, aprameyasya, destroyer of fear for those surrendered to you. Despite our separatist attitude, pratakdiya, we have come to you for shelter out of fear of material existence. Purport, Sridhar Swami explains that the kings present their entreaty in this and the following 5 verses. In this verse, they take shelter of the Lord. In the next 3 verses, they describe their fear. And in the last 2 verses, they make their prayerful request. So it's nicely structured. Submission, 3 verses of fear, 2 verses of their request. Text 26. People in this world are always engaged in sinful activities, and thus are bewildered about their real duty, which is to worship you, according to your commandments. This activity would truly bring them good fortune. Let us offer our obeisances unto the all-powerful Lord, who appears as time and suddenly cuts down one's stubborn hope for a long life in this world. And the supreme commandment of Krishna is in the purport 927 Bhagavad Gita. People in general are bewildered and neglect this auspicious activity, that is dedicating everything to Krishna, preferring instead to perform sinful activities that lead them to terrible suffering. The Krishna consciousness movement is working to enlighten the world about this most essential activity of loving service to the Lord. So the second of these um, verses describing their tribulation. Text 27. You are the predominating Lord of the universe and have descended into this world with your personal power to protect the saintly and suppress the wicked. We cannot understand, O Lord, how anyone can transgress your law and still continue to enjoy the fruits of his work. What they're saying politely is, we're your devotees. Jarasandha is not. Jarasandha is very wealthy, very powerful, and he's enjoying himself. And we're your devotees. We're very submissive to you, and we're in prison, going to be made a human sacrifice. So their faith isn't so strong. Little bit, or indirectly, they're complaining. They're puzzled, and they're complaining. We're in this bad situation, but we're your devotees. So good devotees should be in a bad situation, right? So sometimes people have those feelings. Sometimes people express those feelings. Several times I heard Prabhupada say, one of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples was a German professor. This German professor, because at that time, and going back in time as well, there was a keen interest in the Vedas, scholars. He had a keen interest in the Vedas. So he went to India from Germany to learn more. And in the course of his learning more, he met Bhaktisiddhanta. He became his disciple. It's an interesting history. So now he's back in Germany. And sometimes he would visit India, and he told Prabhupada that during World War I, many German soldiers went to war, and the wives and the daughters and the mothers of those German men that went to war prayed to God, please send our son or our husband or our father back from the war. And when they didn't come, they became atheists. Now, Germany isn't an atheistic country, but they had some expectation that God would be their order supplier, and when that didn't happen, they went in a different place. So these kings are not exactly in the same position, but they're certainly doubting, how is this possible? Someone such a big transgressor of your law is prospering like anything, and those abiding by your law were suffering like anything. Purport. Sridhar Swami explains that the kings were bewildered by the suffering that had come upon them. They state here that since the Lord has descended to this world to protect the pious and punish the wicked, how is it that Jarasandha, who brazenly transgressed the order of the Lord, continued to perform his wicked activities, whereas the kings were put into a miserable condition? He doesn't supply the answer yet because he's just presenting what the question is. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur similarly states that the kings could not understand, or Jarasandha, who had harassed the saintly devotees and nourished the envious, could continue to prosper, whereas the kings were being tormented by the wicked Jarasandha. Similarly, Prabhupada quotes the kings as follows in the Krishna book. My dear Lord, you are the proprietor of all the worlds, and you have incarnated yourself along with your plenary expansion, Lord Balaram, it is said that your appearance in this incarnation is for the purpose of protecting the faithful and destroying the miscreants under the circumstances. How is it possible that miscreants like Jarasandha can put us into such deplorable conditions of life against your authority? We are puzzled at this situation and cannot understand how it is possible. It may be that Jarasandha has been deputed to give us such trouble because of our past misdeeds. But we have heard from revealed scriptures that anyone who surrenders unto your lotus feet immediately becomes immune to reactions of sinful life. We therefore wholeheartedly offer ourselves unto your shelter, and we hope that your Lordship will now give us full protection. So the give us full protection part is the request that comes at the end, but these middle three verses, and this is number 2 of 3, is expressing their predicament, how they're suffering. Now this verse in particular is not just we're suffering, but we're perplexed. How is it possible? He's bad. And we're good. Why do bad things happen to good people? Especially when you're the one that it's happening to. Or someone dear to you and it's happening to. And why? One's faith in one's relationship and the omnipotency and the munificence of the Supreme Lord is put into question because we don't like suffering. Or we don't like to see others, especially others very dear to us. Why wars? Why Russia and Ukraine? Why? And what to do? The third of these 3 verses. O Lord, with this corpse-like body, always full of fear, we bear the burden of the relative happiness of kings, which is just like a dream. Thus we have rejected the real happiness of the soul, which comes by rendering selfless service to you. Being so very wretched, we simply suffer in this life under the spell of your illusory energy. Purport. After expressing their doubts in the previous verse, the kings herein admit that actually they are suffering because of their own foolishness, having given up the eternal happiness of the soul in exchange for the temporary, conditional happiness of a so-called kingly position. Most people make a similar mistake, desiring wealth, power, prestige, aristocratic family, and so on in exchange for their own soul. The kings admit that they have fallen under the spell of the Lord's illusory energy and have mistaken the tremendous anxiety of political leadership for happiness. Well written. People aspire for something, wealth and position and influence and opulences. These are opulences of this world, and they desire to be situated in control or having access to those opulences. But with it comes so much unwanted. It's not what real happiness is. So then comes the request. Therefore, since your feet relieve the sorrow of those who surrender to them, please release us prisoners from the shackles of karma. Manifest as the king of Magadha. Interesting, huh? Please release us from the shackles of karma manifest as the king of Magadha. Wielding alone the prowess of 10,000 maddened elephants, Jarasandha was very, very powerful. Bhima was equally powerful, even more powerful. But the power of 10,000 elephants? He has locked us up in his house just as a lion captures sheep. Purport. The kings here pray for the Lord to release them from the bondage of karma created by the Lord's material potency. The kings make it clear that Jarasandha is so powerful that there is no hope for them to escape by their own power. Now, Jarasandha is an agent. Mahabhairava, he's a worshipper of Mahabhairava. No, he's a worshipper of Maya. Excuse me, he's an agent of Maya. So agents of Maya may have power. But where does Maya get her power to give power to others? From the source of all power. So the divine and demoniac dispositions are empowered by the supreme power, powerful. So why would he empower bad people to do bad things? He's a bad guy. So it may look, and since time immemorial, there's divine and demoniac. It may look like the demoniac are prevailing, and why is this? Why is God allowing this to happen, and so forth and so on. In the end, the demoniac are destroyed. Of course, everyone's bodies are destroyed, but their power, that which they're proud of, is also taken away by time. And it's just the whole cycle of the four yugas, for example, the cycle of the influence of the modes of nature, as ignorance becomes darker and darker and darker, like the circles of time at night, the influence of the darkness of night, everything becomes, you can't see properly, and it's spooky and dangerous and so forth. And then comes the light. It's just how Krishna does things in this world. He doesn't take away free will from Jarasandha-like people, but he may take away all their opulence and take away their pride, their source of their pride, the things of this world that they feel proud of. But in the interim, they may have some strength, some power, some capacity, some understanding of how to, material intelligence, how to manipulate matter so that it looks like, something nice. And all the while very compromised by the circumstance they have created. Oh boy, Prabhupada would speak about this so often. With every convenience, there's an inconvenience. And he calls it scientific research. That's a phrase he liked. But, technology or engineering or something. But misuse of intelligence, misdirected intelligence. So the intelligence, that's an opulence. But supposing one has opulence and misuses it, then he creates something terrible. So why does God let that happen? It said it doesn't interfere with the free will living entities, and there's dark modes. But in course of time, he terminates the dark mode influence, and in comes the light. It's just how he does things. Final of their verses, and the final verse for this morning. This is the messenger conveying the message from the kings, 20,000 kings, to Krishna. O wielder of the disc, That's significant because the chakra destroys the wicked. Your strength is unlimited. And thus, 17 times you crushed Jarasandha in battle. But then, absorbed in human affairs, you allowed him to defeat you once. Now, he is so filled with pride that he dares to torment us, your subjects. O unconquerable one, please rectify this situation. So from previous chapters, after Krishna had killed Kamsa, the co-wives of Kamsa went to their father, Jarasandha. Get revenge. So Jarasandha made a vow. And something like 5 Akshauhini divisions of soldiers went marching to Mathura with his vow to destroy Krishna. But instead he got destroyed with all of his armies and all of his everything, except one person standing on the battlefield himself, and he went back. And this happened 17 times. And Krishna was very happy because he came in the world to kill demoniac kings, and Jarasandha was bringing them. He didn't have to make an effort to go find them. So he was very good with that arrangement. So then the 18th time, it's a nice understanding. Krishna knew it was time to marry Rukmini. It was time to marry Rukmini because Rukmini's brother was having a plan for Rukmini to marry Shishupal. So he had to act quickly. So he didn't defeat Jarasandha the 18th time. Rather, he ran, and then it went to Dwaraka, and many things happened. So that's the reference. You defeated him 17 times. Now that 18th time, to deal with absorbed in human affairs, that was his marriage to Rukmini, he left. And Jarasandha had now become proud. Oh, I defeated Krishna. And he says that a number of times in the next chapter when they actually meet face to face. Very proud. You coward. You're easy to defeat. Just so very proud and foolish. So I'll read the purport and then we'll see if there's discussion. Text 30. The word nri loka niratam indicates that the Lord was absorbed in playing within the world of human beings. Thus, while acting like a human king, he allowed Jarasandha to be victorious in a single battle after the Lord had crushed him 17 times. The kings here imply that Jarasandha is especially harassing them because they are souls surrendered to Lord Krishna. Therefore, they beg the Lord, "Oh, you who hold the chakra weapon high, please make the proper arrangement." Paragraph. Srila Prabhupada explains, this is the Krishna book, the king's feelings as follows. My dear Lord, you have already fought with Jarasandha 18 times consecutively, out of which you have defeated him 17 times by surpassing his extraordinary powerful position. But in your 18th fight, you exhibited your human behavior, and thus it appeared that you were defeated. Oh, my Lord, we know very well that Jarasandha cannot defeat you at any time because your power, strength, resources, and authority are all unlimited. No one can equal or surpass you. The appearance of defeat by Jarasandha in the 18th engagement is nothing but an exhibition of human behavior. Unfortunately, foolish Jarasandha could not understand your tricks, and he has since then become puffed up over his material power and prestige. Specifically, he has arrested us and imprisoned us, knowing fully that as your devotees, we are subordinate to your sovereignty, and thus it's a challenge to Krishna directly. I'm going to take a break, go use the restroom, I'll be right back, and you can think of your questions. Any discussion?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. My question is, can you please explain the word, the separatist attitude? We hear that in the third canto also, Kapiladev, the separatist mentality.
Correct.
So here the kings are saying that despite of our separatist attitude, we have come to you for protection. So I just would like to understand that word, Maharaj.
Word is used in Kapila's teachings specific to the modes of nature. It's used twice, with passion and with ignorance. And the implication is having an interest separate from the Lord's interest. That is, my enjoyment without consideration of Krishna's enjoyment or Krishna's happiness or the position of our being in our constitutional position, servants of the Supreme. So one drops that idea, something else takes its place. And that's the separatist idea. I exist separately, I'm independent, my happiness is everything. I have my plans, I have my endeavors to get that happiness, and the separatist mentality is Krishna's not in the picture. Or even in devotional service, Krishna may be in the picture, but it's all about my plan, my enjoyment, and Krishna's my odor supplier. It's business, not service. It's not undivided service. That's the separatist mentality.
I have one more question, Guru Maharaj. So you mentioned that Krishna does not take away our free will, but people like Jarasandha or like he may take away the opulences. But one of the quality of Krishna is he's neutral. So whatever he does is merciful. So how does that helps a person if he just takes away the material opulences and thereby he get help them with getting rid of the pride, but then the free will is always there.
Yes. Bhakti isn't imposed, it's voluntary. There are obstacles or impediments for bhakti, and Krishna may take away the obstacles or impediments for bhakti, but still, bhakti is a choice, a free will choice. So he doesn't take free will away. Supposing somebody's a mixed devotee. I know a few mixed devotees. So if they have opulence, there may be a tendency to become forgetful of the primary relationship with Krishna purpose of life and become indulgent in interacting with and trying to become the enjoyer, attempting to become the enjoyer of the opulence. Supposing there's no opulence. Somebody's just is intermediate stage of devotion, mixed devotee. Then they don't get the opulence. Then they can get disappointed. So it's a relationship. Living entities and the Supreme Lord have an eternal relationship. Just, a good way to understand this, a good way to understand lots of things about spiritual life is through parenting. So a parent has a child, and the parents want the best for their child. So they give facility for the best to happen, but the child says no. And the child does maybe just the opposite of yes. So the loving parent may suggest some restrictions, but it has different purposes when they suggest some restrictions. So it's like that. It doesn't guarantee that the child is going to say, "Now I understand. I was very foolish." But when there's facility that's without restriction, then here I go. If that's the direction one is going in, then the tendency will magnify. Indulgence will magnify. So if the parent, then Krishna may restrict because it's misuse of that opulence that's come from piety or some proper use of free will. So the free will is the operative part, and then there's the relationship part.
So can we ask, can we pray to Krishna then to take control of our free will choices, Guru Maharaj, then? So that way.
You can pray like that. You can pray like that, but he's not going to take charge of your free will. because it's free will. Say it negatively. If there was no free will, then there wouldn't be love. You love me or else, and there's nowhere else. I got you by your collar and I'm shaking you. Love me. Or else. And there's nowhere else. That's not love. So he doesn't do that because there's love. That's the nature of the spiritual condition of life. He doesn't lobotomize the living entity. They don't have any choices anymore. That's not the way it is. Choices may become restricted, narrower and narrower, and fewer options. That that can be done in many ways. A different form of life than a human form of life. Human form of life, we have options that other forms of life may not have. Then how are we going to use those options? Anything else?
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavad Pranam. In the chapter starting, there is the description of Krishna's daily activities.
Krishna's
daily activities, like
daily duties. Yeah, okay.
Daily duties. So those duties described, that is shown just to show that Krishna is also doing normal human activities.
Yeah, human-like. He's acting on the stage like a human. He's setting an example. And here, this tells us what the ideal example, the ideal behavior is from Krishna's example.
So their deity worship and all, normally are saying there is no separate deity worship.
Well, it's not in the list, but he did. So why not?
Because currently we are saying there is no other deities worship and all, right?
I don't understand what you're asking.
1 minute. The second issue. Okay, demigod worship.
It comes up later where Yudhisthira, in conducting the Rajasuya Yajna, invites the Devas and propitiates the Devas. And there's abundant commentary explaining why he's doing that, and when he does that, what his consciousness is. But Krishna is the personality of Godhead, so he's demonstrating what's in the Vedas, which is one should express one's gratitude for having received from others. And all living entities in this world receive from others, and civilized people express their gratitude to those from whom we receive things. And that's a reason, a major reason, that demigod worship is there in the Vedas. It's a step in the direction of where the demigods get their power from, or their capacity to render some kindness to living entities below them. It's just culture. So he's exhibiting that conduct to teach us higher lessons of life, elevation of character of life. It doesn't mean that he understands that the demigods are the worshipable lords. I mean, Bhagavad Gita makes it very clear he doesn't understand that. But he's setting an example. This is the worldly part of his affairs in Dwarka. Seemingly worldly. Example setting.
Sorry, Maharaj, I didn't understand properly. So here Krishna is doing demigod worship for setting example. but after that, Bhagavad Gita came, and we are saying there is no demigod worship.
You're asking the same question again.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Maharaj. I'm trying to understand. Maybe I
And
didn't.
it's just,
Maybe I need
the
more.
answer doesn't change.
Can you give me more examples, Prabhu?
No.
Maharaj?
I mean, the principle, let's just stay with the principle. He's setting an example. I'll think of some examples. So you like examples. I gave one. One is Yudhisthira. Is Yudhisthira a mixed devotee or a pure devotee? He's a pure devotee. So why is Yudhisthira going to propitiate and offer, because the Rajasuya Yajna requires, according to the Vedic system, of offering praises and prayers and sacrifice, etc., to the demigods, and he's going to do that. But why is he doing that? He wants to show the world. He wants to show the demigods that they are subordinate to Krishna, because in the Rajasuya Yajna, the most important, all the demigods are invited, and the most important person is being honored, and that's Krishna.
Sure, Maharaj. Thank you.
Anything else? Something online?
Hare Krishna. The question is by Ankit Purohit. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Just like the devotees very easily surrendered to the Lord, why is this very difficult for us to surrender to the devotees?
Because we're rebellious. We've misused our free will. It's fundamental. And it's very strong. You have something? No? Yes?
You say, so I was just thinking about this karma which was being as
Which?
the karma.
Shubha karma?
Yes. I mean, not only Shubha karma, like whether it's bad karma or Shubha karma, both the karmas. But especially here, we talk about the suffering karma, right? When we, with our free will, using our free will, if you fully surrender to Krishna, is it possible for us to get rid of the whole, I mean, fully the karma which is going?
Yes. That's pure devotion.
Okay, because I was not sure about it. So we
The
can
answer
totally
is, the answer is yes. Completely. Are you puzzled?
Yeah.
Why are you puzzled? Is it completely not possible?
That's what I was thinking, Maharaj.
Karma it's not possible to completely disconnect the living entity from his past deeds, good and bad. It's not possible to completely, absolutely, transcendentally disconnect the living entity from his past deeds. Not possible. Good and bad. That's your view.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not the correct view. You have something you want to add to this? You want to add to this discussion? You have something else? You want to pursue it further?
So just a clarification, Guru Maharaj. So whatever is going through is different from whatever is like going to come, the karma. So if both the karmas, like already we are going through some karma, right?
Prarabdha karma, yeah.
Yeah. So that karma, and also the karma which is going to come. Maybe I was thinking, my understanding is the karma which is going to come can be by our prayer, free will submission, we can get rid of it. But whatever we are going through it, that karma we have already, by going through it, we are nullifying our karma. So that also can be get rid of totally, completely, by going by bringing down the sufferings down completely
Let's try
in a different way.
different explanation.
Okay. So already I'm suffering. I
Okay,
wanted that.
no, you listen, just listen. You've heard this example. There's a fan, and you pull the plug in the fan. What happens? It stops. In between, there's some momentum, but in short order, the fan will stop. Similarly, devotional services pulling the plug and generating new, and there may be some residual effect, but it's not. Does it come to a stop? Yes. The residual effect is also a minimization of what is actually deserving us, both, the good and the bad, to the point where there's no more. Our lives are not driven by our past karma. And then there's another energy of the Lord that's active in our lives. That's His internal energy. But it's not the external energy anymore. Provided, this is the condition, that the connection with satisfying the Supreme Lord is at the center. Now, supposing there's a mix, or this pratak bina situation, then it's not 10%. But leaving that to the side, the question in principle, can one completely disconnect? Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, last question back here.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. We have seen the prayers of some mixed devotees in this reading today. I was wondering what would be a prayer of a pure devotee. Like Parikshit Maharaj, he did not go to pray and pray for relieving from the takshak. I don't recall anything like that. He simply absorbed in hearing Krishna's pastime. We don't know the internal mood of pure devotees like Srila Prabhupada. He may have several health challenges. So what kind of prayers a pure devotee will do when they have such challenges in life? They simply absorb
Such challenges as what?
as like health challenges, or like
They
Brahmastra
accept
coming.
the answer is simple. I'm just hearing a lecture series from Los Angeles. Prabhupada is lecturing on Canto 1, Chapter 9. Yudhisthira has come by the side of Grandfather Bhishma to request direction and how to deal with his sadness, having so many persons been killed. And that's the topic. And Prabhupada is explaining that reactions, like, in his case, during this period of time, he was lecturing in Los Angeles. He had a cold. You could hear it in his voice. And so he said, you all are taking care of me to the best of your capacity, but still, here, there's a cough. So what does one do when one has this cough? You tolerate it. Take medical treatment, see the doctor, and you tolerate it. So that the main, whatever resources you have to address something, you use those resources, but not with the absolute conviction. The absolute conviction is there's a relationship with Krishna. This is coming. He didn't articulate it, but it's coming because of misconduct of his disciples. So, but he didn't say that. He just said, you just tolerate it. So that your attention can be invested in where you're going. Ultimately, the mission of life and investing of consciousness, rather than absorption in the problem and problem solving and getting all caught up in the complexities of material life. That's what one does.
Yeah, I think a similar case in Bhishma, the last moment, like you were saying, that he was absorbed in Krishna rather than his bodily pain.
So you're confirming?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Thank you.
Srila Prabhupada ki